Imani, is this?
Is he my son?
Atlanta sunlight poured across the wide marble plaza in front of the new Harrington Financial Tower. A massive glass structure rose into the sky, its reflective panels catching flashes of camera bulbs from dozens of reporters gathered behind velvet barriers. News vans lined the street. Journalists adjusted microphones. Local politicians stood near the stage, rehearsing polite smiles. Today was supposed to be simple, a groundbreaking ceremony, a celebration of expansion, a powerful corporation investing hundreds of millions into the city's financial district. But the crowd wasn't gathered for the building. They were here for the man, Nathaniel Harrington. At 42, Nathaniel had become one of the most influential figures in American finance. His company managed billions. His decisions shaped markets. His face appeared regularly on business magazines. Tall, impeccably dressed, calm in a way that made people assume he was always 3 steps ahead of everyone else. Nathaniel stepped onto the stage beneath a canopy bearing the company's silver logo. The applause was immediate. Camera shutters snapped rapidly. A host from a national news network leaned toward her microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced, voice bright with excitement. "Today we witness the next chapter in Atlanta's financial future." Nathaniel accepted the microphone from the event coordinator. For a moment, he simply stood there. The wind lifted the edge of his navy suit jacket. From the outside, he appeared composed. But those closest to the stage noticed something unusual. Nathaniel wasn't looking at the cameras. He wasn't looking at the politicians. He was staring into the crowd, as if searching. A murmur passed through the journalists. Nathaniel cleared his throat slightly. "Thank you all for being here today." His voice carried easily across the plaza. "This tower represents more than growth for Harrington Financial. It represents belief in this city. Atlanta is a place where opportunity meets determination." Polite applause rippled through the audience. Nathaniel paused. His gaze shifted again toward the crowd, toward the far edge, toward a young boy standing beside a woman near the media barrier. The boy looked no older than 7. Sharp eyes, curly hair, standing quietly beside the woman who held his hand. Something about the child made Nathaniel hesitate. For half a second, the billionaire seemed to forget his speech. The audience noticed. The host leaned slightly toward the event coordinator, whispering something. Nathaniel's expression changed, not dramatically, just enough for someone paying close attention to see the weight of recognition. He lowered the microphone, then raised it again. "This building," he said slowly, "is about investment." A pause. "About legacy." The reporters leaned forward. Nathaniel turned slightly. His gaze landed directly on the boy. And for the first time since stepping on stage, his voice lost its practiced smoothness. "I spent many years believing that success was measured in numbers." A quiet tension settled across the plaza. Nathaniel continued, "But sometimes the most valuable investment in your life is the one you walk away from." The crowd grew still. Journalists exchanged confused glances. The speech was no longer about the tower. Nathaniel looked toward the woman standing beside the boy. She had not stepped forward. She had not spoken. She simply stood there in an emerald green suit, posture straight, expression calm, watching, waiting. Nathaniel inhaled slowly. Then he said the words that would dominate headlines across the country within hours. "I walked away from my greatest investment." A long silence stretched across the plaza. Nathaniel's eyes moved to the boy again. "And today, I stand corrected." Gasps moved through the crowd. Camera flashes erupted again, faster this time. Nathaniel stepped down from the podium. The security staff shifted uneasily, unsure whether this moment had been planned. Nathaniel approached the edge of the stage. The boy looked up at him. And in front of dozens of cameras, Nathaniel Harrington said something no one expected from a man known for absolute control. "My name is Nathaniel Harrington," he said quietly. Then he looked directly at the child. "And this is my son." The plaza exploded. Reporters shouted questions. Microphones lifted. Photographers pushed forward. But the woman in the emerald suit did not react. She simply watched Nathaniel with the calm of someone who had already lived through the storm long before the cameras arrived. From the distance, she looked powerful, unshaken, untouchable. Her name was Imani Rhodes, and 7 years earlier, Nathaniel Harrington had left her with nothing. Hard cut. Years earlier, the marble counter inside Nathaniel's penthouse felt cold beneath Imani's fingertips. A thick navy folder rested between them. Divorce documents. Imani stared at the papers, as if the words might rearrange themselves into something kinder. They did not. Nathaniel stood across the room near the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. He wasn't angry. He wasn't shouting. His voice remained calm. Too calm. "This is the cleanest option," he said. Imani lifted her head slowly. The softness in her voice made the words land heavier. "The cleanest option?" Nathaniel exhaled. "This situation is complicated." Imani placed one hand over her stomach. 5 months pregnant. Their child moved slightly beneath her palm. "Complicated?" she repeated quietly. Nathaniel walked toward the counter. He didn't look at her stomach. He looked at the documents. "This divorce protects both of us." Imani searched his face for hesitation, for doubt, for anything resembling the man who had once told her she was the smartest woman he had ever met. But the man standing before her now looked like someone preparing a financial exit. Efficient, strategic, emotionally distant. Imani asked the question slowly. "Protects us from what?" Nathaniel hesitated. Not long. Just long enough to confirm what she already feared. "My family," he said. The room felt suddenly smaller. "My board," he added. Imani blinked once. "So your solution," she said carefully, "is to divorce your pregnant wife." Nathaniel remained silent. That silence answered everything. Imani lowered her gaze to the folder. The Harrington name had built empires, but apparently it had no room for complications. Or courage. A bold betrayal plus chaos. He divorced her while she was carrying his child. Imani finally spoke again. "Are you afraid?" she asked quietly, "or just comfortable with losing us?" Nathaniel did not answer, because deep down, he knew the truth. Comfort had always been easier than courage. Power dynamics in race, class, gender. Have you ever noticed how some people are celebrated for ambition, while others are asked to shrink to make powerful people comfortable? Imani Rhodes had graduated top of her class. Brilliant, driven, capable of building her own empire. But to Nathaniel's world, she was a complication. Not the right background, not the right family name, not the right narrative. And powerful men rarely risk their comfort for the right woman. Imani slid the folder back toward him. "I'll sign," she said quietly. Nathaniel looked surprised. "You will?" Imani nodded slowly. "Yes." But when she lifted her head again, something had changed in her eyes. "You're not protecting me," she said calmly. "You're protecting yourself." Nathaniel opened his mouth to respond. Imani raised a hand. "No explanations." Her voice remained steady. "You made your decision." She placed the pen against the paper, signed her name, then closed the folder. "Now I'll make mine." Nathaniel frowned slightly. "What does that mean?" Imani placed the pen down. "It means you'll never have to worry about me complicating your life again." Nathaniel did not realize it yet, but the quiet strength in her voice carried a promise, one that would take years to fully understand. Everyone's felt invisible or underestimated. Have you ever been left when you needed someone most? Have you ever watched someone choose comfort instead of choosing you? If you have, then you understand exactly how Imani felt standing in that penthouse, alone, pregnant, and suddenly erased from a life she helped build. Some men choose courage, but some men choose safety. Nathaniel gathered the documents. "We'll arrange the settlement quickly," he said. Imani nodded, but she was no longer listening, because in that moment, she realized something powerful. Nathaniel believed he was walking away from a problem, but the truth was far more expensive. He was walking away from his future. Years later, he would stand on a stage in Atlanta, looking into the eyes of the son he had never held, and finally understand the cost of comfort. Stay to discover the outcomes, stay with me. Because the woman he left behind didn't disappear. She returned years later with something Nathaniel Harrington could never purchase. A legacy. Before we continue, like this video and comment legacy if you believe some losses come back multiplied. Because the moment Imani Rhodes walks back into Nathaniel Harrington's world, nothing about his empire will remain the same. Morning traffic flowed steadily through downtown Atlanta. Glass towers reflected the rising sun, their mirrored surfaces turning the city into a grid of light and movement. Commuters hurried along the sidewalks carrying coffee cups and briefcases, while luxury cars lined the entrance of the tallest building on Peachtree Street. At the very top of that skyline stood Harrington Financial Tower, 53 floors of steel and glass, the headquarters of Nathaniel Harrington's billion-dollar empire. Inside the lobby, everything moved with quiet precision. Marble floors stretched across the vast entrance hall. Security guards monitored the revolving doors, while assistants crossed the lobby carrying tablets and files. Executives stepped out of elevators speaking in measured voices about markets, acquisitions, and quarterly forecasts. The building functioned like a machine, and at the center of that machine was Nathaniel Harrington. On the 42nd floor, the executive conference room overlooked nearly the entire city. Nathaniel stood beside the window reviewing a digital presentation projected across the wall. European bond exposure is stabilizing, one of the analysts explained from the far end of the table. Nathaniel listened without interrupting. His expression remained calm, sharp, focused. To the people in the room, Nathaniel looked exactly the way he always did. Composed, controlled, almost impossible to read. "Recommendation?" Nathaniel asked. The analyst adjusted his glasses. "We maintain our current position through the next quarter." Nathaniel nodded once. Approved. Simple. Direct. Efficient. The meeting ended quickly. Executives gathered their devices and left the room quietly, already preparing for the next decision Nathaniel would make that day. But as Nathaniel turned toward the door, his assistant stepped inside. "Sir," she said carefully, "you have an unscheduled visitor downstairs." Nathaniel paused. "Name?" The assistant hesitated for a fraction of a second. "She didn't give one." Nathaniel frowned slightly. "Then how did she get past security?" The assistant shifted uncomfortably. "She didn't." Nathaniel looked at her. "She's waiting outside." Down in the lobby, the morning routine continued, until the revolving doors turned, and the atmosphere shifted. The woman who stepped inside moved with quiet confidence. Emerald green suit, perfectly tailored, sharp lines, elegant, without trying to impress anyone. Heads turned almost instantly. Not because she was loud, but because power has a way of entering a room without asking permission. Imani Rhodes walked across the marble floor with steady steps. Her posture remained calm, shoulders relaxed, expression unreadable. Beside her walked a young boy, 7 years old, curious eyes moving across the massive lobby as he studied the towering ceilings and glass elevators moving along the walls. He tugged gently at her hand. "Mom," he whispered. Imani glanced down. "Yes, Cairo?" The boy looked around again. "This place is huge." A small smile touched her lips. "Yes," she said. "It is." The security guard approached cautiously. "Ma'am," he said politely, "this building requires appointments for visitors." Imani reached into her bag. She removed a simple envelope. "No problem," she said calmly. "Just deliver this upstairs to Nathaniel Harrington." The guard took the envelope. "And your name?" Imani met his eyes. "Tell him Imani Rhodes is here." The guard blinked. Something about the name made him hesitate. He nodded quickly and walked toward the elevator bank. Cairo tilted his head slightly. "Mom?" "Yes?" "Who's Nathaniel Harrington?" Imani studied her son for a moment. A question she had always known would come eventually. She answered gently. "He's someone who made a very expensive mistake." Cairo considered that answer with the seriousness only children possess. "Like when I spilled juice on Grandma's laptop?" Imani almost laughed. "Something like that, but much bigger, 42 floors above them." Nathaniel opened the envelope his assistant had just handed him. Inside was a single sheet of paper. 3 words written in neat handwriting. "You should meet him." Nathaniel's eyes narrowed. Below the message was a name, Imani Rhodes. For the first time in years, Nathaniel Harrington stopped breathing for a moment. Memories he had locked away forced their way forward. A marble counter, divorce papers, a woman 5 months pregnant. Nathaniel looked up sharply. Where is she? In the lobby. Nathaniel moved toward the door immediately. His assistant tried to keep up. Sir, do you want security? No. His voice was firm. Cancel my next meeting. The elevator doors closed. Descending. Each floor number lit up one by one. Nathaniel stared at his reflection in the mirrored wall. 7 years. 7 years since the last time he saw her. 7 years since he convinced himself that walking away had been necessary, responsible, logical. The elevator reached the ground floor. The doors opened. Nathaniel stepped into the lobby and froze. Across the marble floor, Imani stood exactly where the security guard had left her. The emerald suit. The same calm posture. The same quiet strength he remembered. But she looked different too. Stronger, self-possessed, like someone who had built her own world without asking permission. Nathaniel took one step forward. Then his eyes shifted to the boy standing beside her. Dark curls, sharp gaze. Something about the child felt painfully familiar. The boy was studying Nathaniel with open curiosity. Cairo leaned closer to his mother. Mom, he whispered softly. Yes, that man looks like me. Imani did not answer immediately. Nathaniel stopped a few feet away from them. For a moment, no one spoke. The lobby noise seemed to fade. Nathaniel's mind ran through numbers, timelines, possibilities. But the truth was already clear. The boy's eyes, the shape of his face, the quiet intelligence in the way he observed everything. Nathaniel looked at Imani. His voice was lower than usual. You should have called. Imani raised an eyebrow slightly. Why? Nathaniel didn't respond. Because the real answer was simple. He wouldn't have known what to say. Cairo stepped forward slightly. Hi, the boy said politely. Nathaniel looked down at him. The resemblance hit him again, stronger, unavoidable. Cairo extended his small hand confidently. My name is Cairo. Nathaniel hesitated, then slowly shook the boy's hand. His voice came out almost unfamiliar. Nathaniel. Cairo smiled. Nice to meet you. Nathaniel's gaze lifted back to Imani. The silence between them carried years of unfinished conversations, but Imani showed no anger, no dramatic confrontation, just composure. Nathaniel finally spoke. You came all this way just to stand in my lobby? Imani tilted her head slightly. No. Her voice remained calm. I came to return something. Nathaniel frowned. What? Imani looked down at Cairo, then back at Nathaniel. Your legacy. Nathaniel felt the ground shift beneath the careful structure of his life. Years of control, years of certainty, and suddenly, none of it mattered as much as the boy standing in front of him. Cairo looked between them. You two know each other? Imani answered gently. Yes. Nathaniel still hadn't found his voice. Cairo studied him again. You look nervous. Nathaniel let out a quiet breath. That's because, he said slowly, I think I might be. Cairo shrugged. My teacher says nervous just means something important is happening. Nathaniel looked at the boy again. Then, at Imani. For the first time since building Harrington Financial into an empire, Nathaniel Harrington felt completely unprepared. Imani checked her watch. We should talk, she said calmly. Nathaniel nodded. Yes. He gestured toward the private elevator. Cairo looked up at the towering lobby again. Do you work here? He asked Nathaniel. Nathaniel glanced around his own building, then looked back at the boy. Yes. Cairo grinned. Cool. Nathaniel almost smiled. The elevator doors opened. The three of them stepped inside. As the doors closed, Nathaniel realized something unsettling. This moment felt bigger than any financial deal he had ever made, because numbers could always be controlled, but consequences had their own timing. The elevator began to rise, and as the floors passed beneath them, one truth became impossible to ignore. Nathaniel Harrington's past had just walked back into his life, holding his hand. Hard cut. Now let's go back to the moment everything truly began. The first time Nathaniel Harrington saw Imani Rhodes, she was standing near a folding table covered in donation brochures at a nonprofit fundraising mixer in Midtown Atlanta. The venue was modern but intimate. Exposed brick, string lights overhead, wine glasses clinking softly as donors and entrepreneurs exchanged business cards. The event supported financial literacy programs for underserved communities. Nathaniel had not come because he cared deeply about community work. He had come because visibility mattered, and Harrington Financial was expanding. Imani had come because she believed in the mission. She wore a simple navy dress and natural curls pinned loosely at the back of her head. No dramatic entrance, no effort to dominate the room. Yet when she spoke, people listened. Nathaniel noticed her voice before he noticed her face. Measured, confident, clear. Because access changes outcomes, she was saying to a small circle of guests. You can't blame a community for lacking opportunity when no one funds the infrastructure. Nathaniel stepped closer. One of the donors asked, "And how do you propose we measure that impact?" Imani smiled slightly. "With long-term investment instead of short-term publicity." Nathaniel lifted an eyebrow. That line was sharp, calculated, not emotional, strategic. He stepped into the circle. "And what makes you qualified to design long-term investment models?" he asked calmly. The group turned toward him instantly. Everyone in Atlanta's financial sector recognized Nathaniel Harrington. Imani looked at him briefly. No intimidation, no starstruck pause. "I have a master's in economic development," she replied evenly. "And I don't confuse wealth with wisdom." A few people shifted awkwardly. Nathaniel's lips curved slightly. "Interesting. And you think the two don't overlap?" "I think they can," she answered. "But they don't automatically." The air between them shifted. Not hostile, challenging. Nathaniel studied her more carefully now. "You're implying most of us fund projects for appearance." Imani shrugged lightly. "I'm implying that intention matters." Nathaniel crossed his arms. "And yours is pure?" "No," she said honestly. "Mine is personal." That answer caught him. "How so?" Imani held his gaze. "I grew up watching brilliant kids get overlooked because no one invested early. I don't believe in waiting until talent becomes convenient." Silence lingered between them for a beat longer than polite society required. Nathaniel broke it. "What's your name?" "Imani Rhodes." "Nathaniel Harrington." "I know." A faint smile passed between them. That was the first moment. Their second meeting wasn't planned. Nathaniel showed up to the next nonprofit strategy session. Imani noticed immediately. "You back for more wisdom?" she asked, flipping through a presentation packet. Nathaniel leaned back in his chair. "Research? On what?" "You." She didn't blush. "Find anything impressive?" Still deciding, she tilted her head. "You're used to people trying to impress you, aren't you?" "Yes." "And I'm not?" "No." A pause. "And that bothers you?" Nathaniel considered the question carefully. "No," he said slowly. "It intrigues me." Their first unofficial date happened in Piedmont Park. Nathaniel had suggested a high-end restaurant. Imani declined. "Too loud," she said. So they walked instead. Late afternoon sun filtered through the trees while joggers passed and children flew kites in the distance. Nathaniel wore tailored slacks. Imani wore sneakers. "You don't seem impressed by money," Nathaniel observed. "I'm not threatened by it either," she replied. He looked at her sideways. "Most people either worship it or resent it." "I've seen what it can build," she said. "And what it can destroy." Nathaniel slowed his pace. "You think I destroy things?" Imani stopped walking. She turned toward him fully. "I don't know you well enough to answer that." It wasn't an accusation. It was a challenge. Nathaniel smiled slightly. "You're careful." "I'm observant." They resumed walking. A group of teenagers passed them, laughing loudly. Nathaniel watched Imani greet an elderly woman she seemed to recognize from the community center. "You're known here," he noted. "I grew up 10 minutes from here. And now, I live downtown." "Ambitious." "Prepared," she corrected. He nodded slowly. Their conversations stretched for hours that day. About policy, about family, about ambition, about race. At one point Nathaniel said casually, "You don't strike me as someone who dates corporate executives." Imani didn't hesitate. "I don't," he smirked. "So, why are you here?" She met his eyes. "Because you're listening." Their third date was brunch, at a black-owned cafe on Edgewood Avenue. Loud music, laughter, familiar greetings from staff who clearly knew Imani by name. Nathaniel stood out immediately. Sharp suit, polished watch, different world. A man at the next table glanced between them. "Y'all together?" he asked Imani lightly. She nodded. The man studied Nathaniel briefly. "Treat her right," he said simply. Nathaniel held the man's gaze. "I intend to—" The statement wasn't defensive. It was firm. Imani noticed. Later, as they sat with plates half finished, Nathaniel asked quietly, "Does it bother you?" "What?" "The looks." Imani sipped her coffee. "I've gotten looks my entire life. Because some people don't like when black women move freely through powerful spaces." Nathaniel didn't interrupt. She continued, "And some people don't like when powerful men choose differently than expected." He leaned back slightly. "My family won't care." Imani's expression changed just slightly. "You're very sure of that?" "I am." She didn't argue. But the silence carried a question. Their relationship grew through conversation more than spectacle. Late-night debates, shared articles, unexpected laughter. Nathaniel admired her clarity. Imani respected his discipline. Neither of them rushed. But something steady formed between them. One evening in Piedmont Park, Nathaniel said quietly, "You don't need me." Imani smiled. "I know." He studied her face. "That's new for me." She shrugged. "Then learn." And he did. Or at least, he believed he did. Their engagement surprised Atlanta's social circles. Not because Nathaniel Harrington was getting married, but because of who he chose. The wedding itself became a study in contrast. Imani's family filled the venue with warmth. Laughter that echoed across the courtyard. A gospel choir that lifted the ceremony beyond formality. Color, emotion, celebration. Nathaniel's family arrived in tailored restraint. Muted tones, measured smiles, polite applause. Nathaniel's mother hugged Imani briefly. "You look beautiful," she said. But her eyes assessed rather than embraced. At the reception, Imani's cousins danced until their heels came off. Nathaniel's business associates stood near the bar discussing market forecasts. Two worlds sharing a room. Not blending, just coexisting. During dinner, Nathaniel's father leaned toward him. "She's impressive," he said carefully. Nathaniel heard the pause. "Yes." His father took a sip of wine. "This will require adjustment." Nathaniel nodded once. "I'm aware." Across the room, Imani laughed with her grandmother. Radiant, unapologetic. Nathaniel watched her. He loved that about her. At least, he thought he did. Marriage introduced small moments that revealed larger truths. Imani decorated their penthouse with art from local black artists. Nathaniel's mother replaced one painting during a visit. "I thought something neutral might suit the space better," she said. Imani thanked her politely, then hung the original back up the next morning. At corporate dinners, people asked Imani what charity work she did. They assumed she wasn't involved in business. She corrected them gently each time. Nathaniel noticed the pattern. He didn't intervene. He believed silence kept peace. Imani noticed that too. One evening she asked quietly, "Do you ever correct them?" Nathaniel loosened his tie. "It's not necessary. It is to me." He sighed. "They don't mean anything by it." She held his gaze. "That doesn't make it harmless." That was the first fracture. Small, but real. Months passed. Nathaniel's schedule intensified. Board meetings, travel, investor pressure. Imani began spending more time at her nonprofit projects. Their conversations shifted from debate to logistics. "You'll be home late?" she asked one night. "Yes." "Again?" "It's temporary." She nodded, but the distance felt less temporary each week. Nathaniel didn't notice immediately. He believed providing security equaled partnership. Imani believed presence mattered more. At a Harrington family dinner, Nathaniel's aunt asked casually, "So, Imani, are you adjusting well?" Imani smiled. "Yes." The aunt continued, "It must be quite a transition." Imani tilted her head. "In what way?" "Well," the aunt said lightly, "this level of visibility." Imani held her gaze. "I've always been visible." Nathaniel changed the subject. Later, in the car, Imani asked quietly, "Why didn't you let me answer fully?" Nathaniel kept his eyes on the road. "Because it wasn't worth conflict." Imani leaned back in her seat. To you, another fracture. The emotional withdrawal was subtle. Nathaniel began choosing strategy over conversation, avoiding difficult discussions, prioritizing harmony over honesty. Imani felt it. "You're here," she said one night softly, "but you're not with me." Nathaniel rubbed his temples. "I'm building something for us." She looked at him carefully. "I didn't marry you for a building." He didn't respond. Then one quiet Tuesday morning, Imani stood alone in their bathroom. A small white stick rested in her trembling hand. 2 lines. Clear, undeniable. She stared at the mirror, heart racing, not with fear, with possibility. When Nathaniel walked into the bedroom, she held it out to him silently. He looked down, then back up at her. For a split second, joy flashed across his face. Pure, unfiltered. "You're pregnant," he whispered. Imani nodded. "Yes." He stepped forward and wrapped his arms around her. And for that moment, everything felt aligned. But outside their penthouse walls, board expectations intensified. Family pressure sharpened, and Nathaniel Harrington would soon face a choice between comfort and courage. A choice that would lead to the marble counter, the navy folder, and the moment he walked away from the greatest investment of his life. The penthouse kitchen overlooked the city through wide glass panels that reflected the early evening skyline. Imani stood at the marble island slicing fresh strawberries into a bowl, moving slowly, thoughtfully. The pregnancy test still rested in the bathroom trash upstairs, but the reality of it had already settled into her posture. She touched her stomach unconsciously. Nathaniel entered from his office space down the hall, phone pressed to his ear. "Yes," he said calmly. "We'll reschedule the board dinner." A pause. "No, not next quarter. I want it handled this week." He ended the call and placed the phone on the counter. Imani glanced up at him. "You're home early." "For once," he replied. He walked toward her, resting both palms on the marble. There was a softness in his expression that hadn't been there in weeks. "How are you feeling?" She smiled faintly. "Excited." He nodded. "That makes one of us." The words slipped out casually. But they didn't land casually. Imani's hand paused mid-slice. She looked at him carefully. "What does that mean?" Nathaniel exhaled and straightened slightly. "It means," he said evenly, "the timing isn't ideal." There it was. Not rejection. Not yet. Just calculation. Imani set the knife down. "Not ideal for who?" "For us," he replied quickly. "For the company. For the expansion." She studied him. "I didn't realize our child was a quarterly report." Nathaniel frowned. "That's not fair." "I'm not trying to be fair," she said softly. "I'm trying to understand." He leaned back against the counter. "We're in the middle of a European acquisition. Investors are watching everything. The board already thinks I'm distracted. And a baby confirms that? It complicates things." She let the word sit between them. "Complicates." "You were happy this morning," she said quietly. "I am," he insisted. But, he hesitated. Imani saw it before he said it. "But I wasn't planning this right now." She stepped away from the island. "Neither was I," she admitted. Silence followed. But her tone didn't carry fear. It carried resolve. "Still," she continued, "this is good." Nathaniel looked at her. "Good?" "Yes." She walked toward the window, staring out over Atlanta's skyline. "We built something solid," she said. "This is the next step." Nathaniel joined her, though he stood a few feet away. "I just need time to process." Imani nodded. "I can give you that." He studied her profile. "You're not worried?" She smiled gently. "Of course I'm worried. I've never done this before." She placed a hand over her stomach again. "But I'm not afraid." Nathaniel watched that gesture. Something about it unsettled him. Her certainty. Her calm, her belief. He had built an empire through control. But this wasn't controllable. What if this changes everything? He asked quietly. Imani turned to face him fully. "It will." He blinked. "Exactly. And that's not always bad," she replied. Nathaniel moved back toward the island. He needed structure, clarity. He picked up his phone, then set it down again. "You don't understand the scrutiny I'm under." "Then explain it," she said. He hesitated. My father built Harrington Financial from scratch. I expanded it. Every decision I make gets measured, evaluated. And marrying me wasn't evaluated? She asked calmly. He didn't answer immediately. That silence spoke louder than any defense. Imani's expression shifted slightly. Not anger. Recognition. You knew this would come up eventually, she said. Nathaniel rubbed his jaw. I thought we'd have more time. For what? For stability. Imani stepped closer. We are stable. He met her eyes. Are we? The question lingered. A quiet fracture widened. Imani spoke carefully. You married me knowing who I am. Yes. And I married you knowing the pressure you carry. He nodded. So what's different now? He looked at her stomach. Now it's permanent. Her voice remained even. Love is permanent. Nathaniel didn't respond, because permanence felt like risk, and risk was something he only embraced when numbers justified it. Imani saw it clearly now. His fear wasn't about fatherhood. It was about control. She walked back to the island and resumed slicing fruit. You'll figure it out, she said gently. Nathaniel looked at her. You're very sure of that? I am. Why? She met his gaze. Because I chose you. The words were simple, but heavy. Nathaniel didn't know how to carry them. That night, they went to bed earlier than usual. Imani fell asleep quickly. Nathaniel did not. He stared at the ceiling in silence. His mind didn't picture a nursery. It pictured headlines, board reactions, family conversations, investors whispering about distraction. He turned onto his side and looked at his wife sleeping peacefully. She trusted him, completely, and for the first time, he wasn't sure he deserved it. The Harrington estate in Buckhead felt colder than usual that evening. Nathaniel sat across from his parents in the formal sitting room, fireplace lit, crystal glasses untouched on the coffee table. His mother folded her hands carefully. His father remained upright in his leather chair. We hear congratulations are in order, his mother said. Nathaniel nodded once. Yes. A pause. His father leaned forward. Have you considered the optics? Nathaniel stiffened slightly. It's my family. It's also our name, his father replied evenly. Nathaniel held his ground. Imani is capable, intelligent. That isn't the concern, his mother interjected. Nathaniel looked at her. Then what is? She chose her words carefully. Visibility. There it was again. His father continued. You're expanding into conservative markets. Investors prefer predictability. My marriage hasn't affected revenue, Nathaniel said firmly. His father's expression remained calm. Revenue isn't the only measurement. Nathaniel felt the room tighten. You're talking about race, he said plainly. Silence. His mother spoke first. We're talking about legacy. He almost laughed. She is my legacy. His father's voice hardened slightly. This company is your legacy. Nathaniel leaned back. And my child? His mother's expression shifted. That's precisely the complication. The word landed sharply. Nobody wants scandal, his father continued. You've worked too hard to introduce instability. Instability? Nathaniel repeated. A mixed narrative invites scrutiny, his mother said carefully. Nathaniel's jaw tightened. She's my wife. And this is a public company. His father responded. Nathaniel stood. You're asking me to do what? His father didn't blink. I'm asking you to think strategically. The implication hung in the air. Distance. Damage control. Containment. Nathaniel stared at them. Are you suggesting I abandon my family? His father held his gaze. I'm suggesting you protect the Harrington name. Silence swallowed the room. Nathaniel felt something shift inside him. Not conviction. Not clarity. Pressure. He left without finishing his drink. As he drove back downtown, his father's words echoed louder than Imani's optimism. Optics. Legacy. Complications. By the time he reached the penthouse, fear had replaced joy entirely. The navy folder rested on the marble counter between them. 5 months pregnant. Imani stood upright. Nathaniel stood across from her. No raised voices. No shattered glass. Just silence heavy enough to change everything. This protects everyone, Nathaniel said carefully. Imani didn't reach for the folder immediately. Everyone? she asked softly. Yes. Does it protect our child? Nathaniel hesitated. The hesitation answered her. She opened the folder slowly. Page after page of legal language. Then she saw it. A clause regarding paternity acknowledgement. Delayed recognition pending private confirmation. Her eyes lifted slowly. You're questioning whether this is yours. Nathaniel's voice lowered. It's procedural. She closed the folder. It's cowardice. He flinched slightly. You know that's not true. Imani stepped closer. You're not divorcing me because you don't love me. He didn't deny it. You're divorcing me because you don't want to defend me. Silence. Tears gathered in her eyes. But they didn't fall. I don't beg, she said quietly. Nathaniel swallowed. This is temporary. She almost smiled. No, she said gently. This is permanent. He reached for her hand. She stepped back. You made your decision. She signed the papers without shaking, without pleading, without collapsing. That hurt him more than if she had screamed. When she finished, she placed the pen down carefully. You'll never have to choose between courage and comfort again, she said. Then she added, because I won't be here. Nathaniel stood frozen. The door closed behind her softly, and the penthouse, once filled with laughter, debate, possibility, felt hollow. For the first time in his life, Nathaniel Harrington had chosen safety over love, and he would spend the next 7 years paying for it. Imani did not cry in the elevator. She did not cry in the rideshare. She did not cry when the driver asked politely, "Everything okay, ma'am?" She answered simply, yes, because in that moment, survival felt more urgent than grief. She left the penthouse with 2 suitcases, her laptop, and the certainty that begging would have cost her more than divorce ever could. Atlanta greeted her differently this time. Not as the rising executive's wife, but as a daughter returning home. Her grandmother's house in southwest Atlanta smelled like cornbread and shea butter. The porch steps creaked exactly the same way they had when she was 16. The front door opened before she knocked. You ain't even text first, her grandmother scolded gently, pulling her into a firm embrace. Imani allowed herself to lean into that hug, just for a second. Her aunt followed behind, wiping her hands on a kitchen towel. You eating? Yes, Imani said automatically. No, you're not, her aunt replied. Sit down. They didn't ask questions immediately. They fed her first. Fried chicken, greens, mac and cheese. Real food, real grounding. It wasn't until the dishes were cleared that her grandmother finally asked, how far along? 5 months. A silence filled the small dining room. Does he know? Her aunt asked carefully. Yes, and Imani kept her voice steady. He chose differently. Her grandmother nodded slowly. Then we choose you. That was it. No lectures, no pity, just alignment. Summer in Atlanta carried a different rhythm than Manhattan. Cookouts started before sunset and lasted until someone remembered the mosquitoes. Neighbors came by with folding chairs and unsolicited advice. Baby kicking yet? Mrs. Johnson asked one evening, handing Imani a plate stacked too high. Yes, ma'am. Good. That means he's strong. Imani smiled. Or stubborn. Same thing, Mrs. Johnson laughed. Children ran through the yard while music played from a small speaker on the porch. Imani sat beneath the shade of an old oak tree and allowed herself to breathe. This was not the life she planned, but it was steady. It was rooted. It was hers. As her pregnancy progressed, so did her resolve. She visited local clinics for checkups. She began outlining ideas in a notebook, models for urban investment that blended profit with community retention. Even while pregnant, even while adjusting, she was building. One night her aunt found her at the kitchen table surrounded by spreadsheets. Baby, you supposed to be resting. I am resting. That looked like work. It's both, Imani replied. Her aunt shook her head. You always did too much. Imani smiled faintly. I'm doing enough. Labor came early on a rainy October morning. Imani woke before dawn, steady but alert. Her grandmother drove her to the hospital. No panic, just focus. Hours later, the room filled with the first cry of a child who would alter every definition of legacy. Cairo entered the world with strong lungs and tightly curled fists. Imani held him against her chest, tears finally falling freely. Not from sadness, from awe. Her grandmother leaned close. "What's his name?" "Cairo." Her aunt blinked. "That ain't no southern name." Imani smiled softly. "It's strong." She looked down at her son. "And it travels." Cairo's tiny hand wrapped around her finger instinctively. Imani felt something powerful settle into her bones. She had been erased from one world. But here, she was central, essential, irreplaceable. The hospital room grew quiet that night. Cairo slept against her chest. Imani whispered softly to him, "I will never make you feel optional." The promise wasn't about Nathaniel. It was about choice. She had been left when she needed someone most. Cairo would never question his place. When she brought him home, the neighborhood responded like family. "Look at that head full of hair," Mrs. Johnson declared. "He got leadership in his eyes," her uncle said. Imani laughed gently. "He's 2 days old. And already watching everything," her grandmother added. They were right. Cairo's eyes tracked movement constantly, observing, processing. Even as an infant, he seemed alert. Imani noticed. She always noticed. Late one evening, as she rocked Cairo to sleep on the porch, she looked out over the quiet street and whispered to herself. He thought he was walking away from something small. She adjusted the blanket around her son. "He was walking away from you." Sleep became a luxury measured in fragments. Cairo woke every 2 hours. Imani adapted without complaint. Laptop open on the dining table, textbooks stacked beside a baby monitor. She enrolled in a part-time MBA program online, determined to refine the investment models she had sketched during pregnancy. Her aunt walked into the kitchen at 1:30 a.m. one night. "You still up?" "Yes." "You feeding that baby or feeding capitalism?" Imani smiled tiredly. "Both." Cairo fussed softly from his bassinet. She lifted him gently and balanced her laptop on the table with one hand while cradling him with the other. "Group project due?" her aunt asked. "Case analysis. You look exhausted." "I am." "Then stop." Imani shook her head. "I can't." "Why not?" She met her aunt's eyes. "Because comfort is expensive." Her aunt studied her carefully. "You still proving something to him?" Imani's jaw tightened slightly. "No." "Then who?" She looked down at Cairo, nursing quietly. To him, remote consulting contracts became her bridge. Small urban development firms needed financial models but couldn't afford large consultants. Imani undercharged at first. She needed experience. She needed proof of concept. She needed to move. One client called late one afternoon. "Miss Rhodes, your projections are aggressive." "They're realistic," she corrected calmly. "You're assuming long-term neighborhood retention." "Yes." "That's idealistic." "It's sustainable." A pause. "You're confident." "Yes." "Send the revised draft." She ended the call and leaned back in her chair. Cairo babbled from his playmat. She smiled at him. "See? We're getting there." Exhaustion became routine. One night she fell asleep at the table while editing a proposal. Her grandmother gently nudged her awake. "Go to bed. I have to finish." "You already finished surviving," her grandmother said quietly. "That's enough for tonight." Imani closed her laptop slowly. She carried Cairo to her room and lay beside him. In the dark, she whispered, "We're not just surviving. We're building." Her MBA classes sharpened her strategy. She studied case studies about corporate growth, acquisitions, and risk management. Each time she read about legacy planning, she thought of Nathaniel's father's words. Legacy. The word no longer intimidated her. It energized her. Because legacy was not about last names. It was about impact. 2 years after Cairo's birth, Imani registered her company, Carter Urban Collective, named after her grandmother's maiden name. A quiet tribute. Her mission was clear. Strategic urban investment that strengthened communities without displacing them. The first pitch meeting took place in a small co-working space downtown. 3 investors, one skeptical, one bored, one curious. Imani stood before them with a digital presentation she had built between nap times. "Our model centers ownership retention," she explained. Community equity participation reduces displacement risk and increases long-term returns. The skeptical investor leaned back. You're asking developers to share profit? Yes. They won't. Some will. And if they don't, then they'll lose neighborhoods eventually. The bored investor checked his watch. The curious one leaned forward. Why do you care this much? Imani didn't hesitate. Because I've seen what happens when people get priced out of their own history. Silence followed. The meeting ended without commitment. First rejection. She walked out of the building, Cairo's daycare pickup reminder buzzing on her phone. For a brief moment, doubt flickered, but bitterness did not follow. Instead, she adjusted her strategy. She refined her data. She narrowed her target market. 3 weeks later, a mid-sized development firm requested a consultation. The CEO met her at a cafe near Auburn Avenue. You're young, he said. I'm prepared. You don't have a large portfolio. I have strong numbers. He studied her proposal quietly. These projections assume partnership. Yes. And community buy-in. Yes. That's risky. So is displacement. He leaned back. You're stubborn. I'm consistent. A long pause. Then, all right. One project. Small scale. Imani held his gaze. Deal. That was the breakthrough. Not explosive. Not dramatic. But foundational. The first contract. The first official client of Carter Urban Collective. She stepped outside the cafe and called her grandmother immediately. He said yes. Told you. Her grandmother replied calmly. I didn't. You didn't quit either. Imani smiled, looking up at the Atlanta skyline. Years earlier, she had left a glass tower feeling erased. Now she stood on the sidewalk building something from scratch. Not out of revenge, out of vision. Cairo would grow up watching her choose dignity every time. Not because she lacked pain, but because she refused to let pain define her. 3 years after the divorce, Nathaniel Harrington remarried. The announcement appeared in business columns first, then society pages. The bride, Charlotte Whitmore, daughter of a prominent banking family. Educated, well-connected, appropriate. The ceremony took place at a private country club outside Atlanta. White roses. Soft violin quartet. Perfect symmetry. Charlotte wore elegance like a uniform. Smooth blonde hair pulled back. A smile measured for photographs. Her hand rested lightly on Nathaniel's arm, as if she had studied how much closeness to display. The guest list included senators, investors, legacy families. No gospel choir. No cousins dancing until their shoes came off. Just champagne and strategic alliances. Nathaniel stood beside Charlotte beneath a floral arch and repeated vows he had once meant deeply. This time, the words felt structured, predictable, safe. Charlotte fit seamlessly into Harrington's social life. She hosted dinners where conversation revolved around philanthropy boards and tax advantages. She knew when to laugh, when to nod, when to redirect. At the country club, women admired her restraint. You two look perfect together, someone remarked one afternoon, as Charlotte and Nathaniel walked past the tennis courts. Charlotte smiled lightly. That's the goal. Nathaniel didn't correct her. Their home reflected the same aesthetic. Neutral artwork, minimal contrast, controlled design. Charlotte removed the last painting Imani had once rehung and replaced it with abstract pieces selected by an interior consultant. Nothing loud, nothing rooted, nothing that sparked debate. Evenings were quiet. Dinner at 7. Wine poured precisely. Conversation measured. How was the board? Charlotte asked one night. Productive, Nathaniel replied. She nodded. They approved the international expansion? Yes. Good. Silence followed. Charlotte folded her napkin carefully. I've scheduled the foundation gala for September. Fine. Another pause. We should discuss timing, she added. Nathaniel glanced up. Timing for what? Charlotte met his eyes calmly. Children. He held her gaze for a second too long. I'm not sure that's necessary. Her expression barely shifted. Necessary. I mean, he corrected. We're stable as we are. Charlotte studied him quietly. You don't want children? He hesitated. The answer rose immediately in his chest, but he suppressed it. I'm focused. She nodded once. I understand. She always said that. I understand. But understanding did not mean warmth. Their marriage functioned like a partnership agreement. Efficient, respectable, emotionally distant. At social events, Charlotte's hand rested on Nathaniel's arm as photographers captured them. They looked aligned, balanced, uncomplicated. But inside the quiet walls of their home, absence lived comfortably between them. No toys in the hallway, no laughter from another room, no small voice asking questions. Nathaniel sometimes paused at the top of the staircase late at night, listening. There was nothing to hear. Charlotte never mentioned it again, and he never offered more. Because this marriage required no courage, only maintenance. Success expanded. Harrington Financial doubled its assets. Nathaniel's face appeared on magazine covers beside headlines about strategic dominance. He delivered keynote speeches about foresight. Investors trusted his discipline. Markets responded to his decisions. But late at night, after Charlotte had gone to sleep, Nathaniel often remained in his office. City lights flickered beyond the windows. His reflection stared back at him from the glass. He would loosen his tie slowly, remove his cufflinks, sit in silence longer than necessary. There were no arguments at home, no dramatic conflict, just stillness. One night, after a particularly successful quarter, Nathaniel opened his laptop. Not for work. He typed 2 words into the search bar, Imani Rhodes. Her name appeared instantly. Articles, community features, a business profile, Carter Urban Collective. He clicked. A professional website loaded. Urban investment, equity participation, long-term growth models. He scrolled, then stopped. There was a photograph on the homepage. Imani stood beside a small group of community leaders at a ribbon-cutting event, and beside her, a boy. About 5 at the time the photo had been taken. Dark curls, observant eyes, standing close to her leg. Nathaniel leaned closer to the screen. The resemblance struck him physically, not imagined, not exaggerated, real. The boy was studying something off-camera with quiet intensity. Nathaniel's chest tightened. He clicked another article. A local news feature mentioned Imani by name. Community impact, strategic partnerships. And then, she is often seen at events with her son Cairo. Nathaniel whispered the name under his breath. Cairo. He repeated it. Once, twice, testing how it felt in his mouth. Cairo Harrington. The thought formed uninvited. He leaned back slowly in his chair. 7 years. He had convinced himself distance simplified things. That not knowing protected him. But seeing that photograph shattered the illusion. He zoomed in. The boy's posture. The focus in his eyes. Nathaniel recognized himself. And recognized what he had walked away from. His phone buzzed on the desk. A message from Charlotte, coming to bed. Nathaniel stared at the screen a moment longer before closing the laptop. Yes, he texted back. But he did not sleep that night. He lay beside Charlotte, while her breathing settled into rhythm. His mind replayed the marble counter, the navy folder, the clause, her calm voice saying, I don't beg. He turned onto his side, staring into darkness. For years he had framed the divorce as strategy, necessary alignment, optics management. Now, staring at the ceiling in silence, the truth felt simpler. He had been afraid. Afraid of disruption, afraid of challenge, afraid of standing alone in defense of something real. The empire expanded, but something essential had contracted. Near dawn, Nathaniel rose quietly and walked downstairs. He opened his laptop again. This time, he didn't just look at the website. He searched school enrollment statistics in Imani's district. He looked up pediatric development benchmarks. He researched nothing in particular, just orbiting the reality of a son he had never met. When sunlight finally touched the windows, he closed the laptop. Charlotte entered the kitchen moments later, composed as always. You're up early. Couldn't sleep. She poured coffee. Big week. Yes. She looked at him carefully. You seem distracted. Nathaniel met her eyes. Do the first? Yes. He held her gaze for a second, then looked away. It's nothing. But it wasn't nothing. It was absence. The Harrington Financial Executive Boardroom buzzed with discussion. A major redevelopment contract was under review, a large-scale urban revitalization project requiring community stabilization strategy. Nathaniel scanned the bid sheet casually at first, then stopped. Carter Urban Collective. His hand froze slightly over the document. He read it again to confirm. Carter Urban Collective. Imani's company. He kept his expression neutral. Next bidder? He asked evenly. The strategy director began summarizing. Carter Urban Collective proposes a hybrid equity participation model. Lower short-term margin but stronger retention metrics. Nathaniel listened carefully. Reputation? He asked. Solid in regional markets. Smaller firm but high community trust. And leadership? Imani Rhodes, founder. The room remained unaware of the personal history tied to the name. Nathaniel leaned back slowly. What's your assessment? He asked the director. Unconventional, but compelling. Nathaniel nodded once. Schedule a presentation. His voice did not waver, but internally something shifted. This was not a coincidence. This was convergence. Years of separation narrowing into one boardroom decision. As executives moved on to the next agenda item, Nathaniel remained still. The past had just entered his professional sphere, and this time, he could not sign it away. We now align precisely with the lobby scene introduced earlier in Part 2, expanding it with deeper internal layering while maintaining full consistency. The revolving doors turned. Imani stepped inside Harrington Financial Tower. Emerald suit tailored sharply. Cairo holding her hand. The lobby hummed with routine corporate movement. Until she arrived. Heads turned subtly. Confidence has gravity. Cairo looked up at the ceiling. Mom, this place is huge. It is, she replied calmly. The security guard approached. Ma'am, do you have an appointment? She handed him a card. Carter Urban Collective. Nathaniel Harrington is expecting bids today. The guard nodded. Cairo leaned closer to her. Is this important? Yes. Like presentation day? She smiled faintly. Exactly like that. Moments later, the elevator doors opened. Nathaniel stepped out. He saw her immediately. Time did not slow. It sharpened. Imani stood composed. Cairo beside her. Nathaniel's eyes shifted to the boy. Recognition landed fully now, not through a screen. In motion. In presence. Cairo studied him openly. Then said softly, Mom. Yes, that man looks like me. Silence pressed against the marble walls. Imani did not look at Nathaniel first. She looked at her son. Yes, she said gently. He does. Nathaniel swallowed. Years collapsed into that single exchange. Cairo stepped forward slightly. Hi. Nathaniel's voice came slower than usual. Hello. Cairo tilted his head. Do you work here? Yes. Cairo considered that. Cool. Imani maintained professional distance. Mr. Harrington, she said evenly, we're here regarding the redevelopment contract. Mr. Harrington, not Nathaniel. Not anything else. The title landed precisely. Nathaniel nodded. Of course. His voice returned to executive tone. Let's go upstairs. As they stepped into the elevator, Nathaniel's reflection stared back at him alongside his son's smaller silhouette. Cairo glanced at the floor numbers lighting up. Mom, this is like a rocket. Imani smiled. Focus. Nathaniel almost laughed. Almost. But the moment was too charged. When the elevator doors opened, the collision was complete. Personal history, professional stakes, future consequences, all sharing one hallway. The executive conference room filled quickly. Charlotte entered quietly, taking a seat near the back under the guise of observing community relations strategy. She recognized Imani immediately. Recognition flickered across her expression, subtle, controlled. Imani placed her presentation tablet on the table. Cairo waited outside with an assistant and coloring pages. Nathaniel took his seat at the head of the table. Professional mask secured. Ms. Rhodes, he began evenly. Thank you for coming. Thank you for the opportunity, she replied. No tremor. No hesitation, she began. Our proposal prioritizes equity retention without sacrificing profitability. Slides shifted smoothly. Data precise. Metrics clear. Board members leaned forward. This model assumes long-term partnership, one executive said. Yes, Imani replied. Short-term extraction destabilizes neighborhoods and increases long-term cost. Nathaniel watched her carefully. She was sharper than before, more grounded. Confidence no longer fueled by ambition alone, but experience. Charlotte studied her too. Not with jealousy, with assessment. You're proposing community co-ownership, another executive noted. Yes. That reduces our control. It increases your sustainability. Silence. Imani continued without flinching. You can build towers, she said calmly. Or you can build loyalty. One lasts longer. Nathaniel's fingers tightened slightly against the table. Years ago, she had spoken about long-term investment at that non-profit mixer. Now she was presenting it inside his empire and commanding the room. A board member asked, "What qualifies your firm to manage this scale?" Imani met the question evenly. Results. She pulled up a case study. Neighborhood stabilization, revenue growth. Retention metrics exceeding projections. Charlotte leaned forward slightly. Your model assumes trust, Charlotte said smoothly. Yes. And what happens when trust fails? Imani held her gaze. Then leadership failed first. The room went quiet. Nathaniel's eyes locked onto Imani's. Power had shifted. Not because she demanded it, but because she earned it. The meeting concluded with measured applause. Thank you, Ms. Rhodes, Nathaniel said evenly. She gathered her materials calmly. Before leaving, she paused. Mr. Harrington, he looked at her. Our firm believes in legacy too. The word carried weight. She exited without lingering. Charlotte remained seated for a moment longer, then turned to Nathaniel. She's formidable. Yes, he replied quietly. And the boy? Charlotte asked softly. Nathaniel did not answer immediately. Finally, he's mine. Charlotte absorbed that. No drama, just clarity. The collision was complete. Business, history, bloodline, all in the same room. If someone left you at your lowest and later needed you at your highest, what would you do? Comment below. The boardroom emptied slowly. Executives filtered out with tablets tucked under their arms, murmuring about projections and partnership models. The door clicked shut. Only Nathaniel and Imani remained. The skyline stretched behind him through the glass wall. For a moment, neither spoke. Professional air still lingered between them like a thin barrier. Nathaniel broke it first. You've built something strong. Imani didn't sit back down. Thank you. He studied her posture. Composed, alert, distant. I didn't expect you to scale this quickly. She tilted her head slightly. You didn't expect a lot of things. The statement was calm, not sharp, but precise. Nathaniel exhaled. I deserved that. Silence settled. Imani placed her tablet into her bag carefully. If this is about the contract, our proposal stands on its own. It's not about the contract, he said. She paused, then looked at him directly. Then what is it about? Nathaniel moved from the head of the table, abandoning the symbolic seat of authority. He stopped a few feet from her. I was wrong. The words sounded unfamiliar in his voice. Imani's expression didn't shift. Be specific. He nodded once. I thought controlling the narrative would protect everything. Everything? She asked. The company, the name, stability. Imani's gaze hardened slightly. And me? He swallowed. I thought distance would minimize damage. To who? He hesitated. To everyone. Imani stepped closer. You were wrong, she said evenly. He nodded again. I know. She held his eyes. You were wrong because you tried to erase. The word hung between them. Erase. Nathaniel's jaw tightened. I didn't think of it that way. That's the problem, she replied. He looked down briefly. When my father spoke about optics and legacy, I convinced myself it was strategic. Imani didn't interrupt. I told myself I was choosing long-term preservation. And instead? She asked quietly. I chose fear. The admission landed heavier than any excuse. Imani studied him carefully. For years, she said, I replayed that kitchen island conversation. He looked up. The one where timing wasn't ideal? Yes. He closed his eyes briefly. I was afraid. Of what? Of losing control. The honesty startled even him. He continued. My father built Harrington Financial from nothing. I inherited expectation. Every decision felt like it had to justify his risk. And I didn't? She asked. You did, he said quickly. But defending you meant confronting him. Confronting the board. Confronting investors. Imani's voice remained steady. So you confronted me instead. Nathaniel flinched slightly. I thought you'd recover. Her laugh was quiet and without humor. I did. I see that. She took a slow breath. You didn't just leave me, Nathaniel. He didn't correct her for using his first name. You questioned whether Cairo was yours. His eyes dropped. That clause was procedural. It was personal, she replied. He nodded slowly. I know that now. Imani folded her arms lightly. For 7 years, you had the option to reach out. I didn't know how. That's not the same as not knowing. The truth sat heavily. Nathaniel looked at her with something new in his eyes. Not authority, not entitlement. Regret. I watched from a distance, he admitted quietly. Her expression shifted slightly. You searched. Yes. And he looks like me. He is you, she said. Silence. I can't undo what I did, he said. No, she agreed. But you can decide what you do next. He met her gaze. I want to know him. The request was simple, not grand. Imani considered him carefully. You don't get to enter his life because you feel guilty. I'm not asking for forgiveness. Good, she replied. Because that's not on the table. Nathaniel accepted that. I'm asking for access. Imani walked toward the door. Access requires consistency. I can do that. She stopped before leaving. Then prove it. She opened the door. Start with honesty. The door closed behind her. Nathaniel remained standing in the conference room alone. For the first time in his professional life, ego felt smaller than consequence. The lunch meeting was not dramatic. No grand restaurant. No staged intimacy. Just a quiet cafe near Centennial Olympic Park. Imani sat across from Nathaniel at a small outdoor table. Cairo sat between them, legs swinging lightly beneath his chair. He studied the menu with serious concentration. I want the grilled cheese, he announced. Good choice, Imani said. Nathaniel smiled faintly. I used to order that too. Cairo looked at him. Really? Yes. Cairo seemed to file that information away. The waiter left. Silence followed. Cairo looked between them. So, he said casually, how do you know each other? Imani didn't hesitate. We were married. Cairo blinked. You were? Yes. Nathaniel watched him carefully. That makes you my dad? Direct. Clear. Nathaniel's throat tightened slightly. Yes. Cairo nodded slowly. Okay. No shock. No meltdown. Just processing. The food arrived. Cairo took a bite of his sandwich thoughtfully. Then asked the question that had been building quietly. Why didn't you want me? The table went still. Imani did not rush to rescue the moment. Nathaniel felt the weight of it fully. He looked at his son. I did want you. Cairo tilted his head. Then why weren't you there? Nathaniel chose not to soften it. Because I was afraid. Of me? No. Of what? Nathaniel exhaled slowly. Of standing up to people who told me you would make things complicated. Cairo chewed thoughtfully. Like math homework? Imani almost smiled. Different kind of complicated, Nathaniel said gently. Cairo looked at him carefully. Mom says complicated just means important. Nathaniel's chest tightened. She's right. Cairo nodded once. So you were scared? Yes. Are you still scared? Nathaniel considered that, honestly. No. Cairo studied him again. Good. He returned to his sandwich. Imani watched the exchange quietly. No dramatics. No tears. Just clarity. After a few minutes, Cairo spoke again. Are you gonna come to my science fair? Nathaniel blinked. When is it? Next month. Yes, Nathaniel said immediately. If you want me there. Cairo shrugged. Yeah. It'd be cool. Imani spoke calmly. Consistency matters. Nathaniel nodded. I understand. Cairo wiped his hands on a napkin. Grandma says if you mess up, you gotta fix it. Nathaniel smiled faintly. She's wise. Cairo leaned back in his chair. So are you fixing it? Nathaniel met his son's eyes fully. I'm trying. Cairo accepted that. Okay. The simplicity stunned him. Children didn't demand speeches. They demanded presence. As they stood to leave, Cairo reached for Imani's hand first, then hesitated. Looked at Nathaniel. After a brief pause, he extended his other hand. Nathaniel took it carefully, not possessively, not triumphantly, carefully. As they walked toward the park entrance, Nathaniel felt something unfamiliar, not power, not control, responsibility. And for the first time, he did not run from it. Charlotte did not discover Cairo accidentally. She found out years ago. During the early months of her marriage to Nathaniel, she had reviewed archived legal documents tied to Harrington Financial's reputational safeguards. Charlotte was thorough, discreet, strategic. One evening, while cross-referencing old divorce filings connected to Nathaniel, she found a draft clause. Paternity acknowledgement delayed pending confirmation. The language stood out. Charlotte closed the file slowly. She didn't confront Nathaniel then. Instead, she researched quietly. Imani Rhodes, pregnant at the time of divorce. Timeline aligned. Charlotte understood immediately. Nathaniel had once questioned whether the child was his, not publicly, but legally. She also understood something else. He had been pressured. Because attached to the same archived folder were internal memos from Nathaniel's father recommending containment. Charlotte absorbed the information and made a decision. She stayed. Not because she was naive, but because she valued alignment, status, stability, predictable outcomes. Nathaniel offered structure. Structure offered security. Security offered influence. Love was optional. Position was not. But now, Imani stood inside their boardroom. Cairo existed in visible form, and Charlotte saw something new in Nathaniel's posture. Not nostalgia. Recognition. That threatened the equilibrium she had chosen. Charlotte requested a private meeting. Not in the boardroom. Not in public. A quiet terrace overlooking the city. Imani arrived on time. Charlotte stood already waiting, hands folded lightly in front of her. Thank you for coming, Charlotte said evenly. You asked, Imani replied. Charlotte studied her for a moment. You're exactly as described. By who? Everyone. Imani didn't react. Charlotte continued. I knew about Cairo years ago. Imani's eyes narrowed slightly. How? I read the legal drafts. Silence. And you stayed? Imani asked. Yes. Why? Charlotte answered without hesitation. Stability. Imani considered her. Honest. Charlotte nodded. I don't build my life around romance. I build it around positioning. And now? Imani asked. Now positioning is shifting. The wind moved lightly across the terrace. Charlotte met Imani's gaze directly. There's something you should know. Imani waited. Nathaniel's father pressured the divorce harder than he admitted. Imani's expression didn't soften. He still signed. Yes, Charlotte agreed. He was weak, not malicious. Weak. The distinction settled between them. Imani looked out over the city. For years I believed he chose cruelty. Charlotte shook her head. He chose approval. That's not better. No, Charlotte said calmly. But it's different. Imani absorbed that slowly. Charlotte continued. You deserve full context. Why give it to me? Imani asked. Charlotte's eyes were steady. Because clarity is power. And you think this weakens me? No, Charlotte replied quietly. I think it complicates him. The truth sat plainly. Charlotte stepped back slightly. I stayed because Nathaniel was predictable. And now? He's changing. Imani's voice remained level. That's not my responsibility. I know. They stood in silence for a moment. Two women, not enemies, not allies, strategists. Charlotte spoke once more. You built something strong. So did you, Imani replied. Charlotte smiled faintly. Yes. The difference was, one built from love, the other from alignment. As Imani turned to leave, Charlotte added quietly, Whatever happens next, understand this. He was afraid of losing power, not of loving you. Imani paused, then said softly, "That may be the most disappointing truth of all." She walked away. And for the first time, the narrative no longer felt simple. Nathaniel had been weak, not cruel, afraid, not heartless. The complication deepened. Redemption was no longer about apology. It was about courage. The press release went live at 8 a.m. Harrington Financial announces strategic partnership with Carter Urban Collective. By 8:07, financial blogs picked it up. By 8:15, business news networks were discussing it. By noon, the narrative had shifted from strategic partnership to unexpected alignment. Nathaniel stood in his office watching the media cycle accelerate. The headline beneath his photo read, "Harrington partners with ex-wife's firm in major urban deal." He had not hidden the connection. He had authorized transparency, and transparency came with noise. His phone buzzed repeatedly. Board members, investors, one text from his father, "Call me." The board meeting was called within hours. Nathaniel entered the conference room prepared. A senior director spoke first. "Is it true that Miss Rhodes is your former spouse?" "Yes." "And the child involved?" "Yes." Murmurs moved around the table. "You understand the optics?" Another member asked sharply. "Yes." "And you still approved this?" "Yes." Silence. "This exposes us to scrutiny." Nathaniel held steady. "We expose ourselves to irrelevance when we ignore good strategy." A few executives shifted uncomfortably. One leaned forward. "This looks personal." "It is," Nathaniel said plainly. "But the numbers stand independently." The director flipped through documents. "Community equity participation reduces short-term margins. It increases long-term stability," Nathaniel replied. "And if the press frames this as reconciliation, they will," he answered calmly. "And?" Nathaniel leaned back. "I'm not hiding." The statement altered the energy in the room. For years, Nathaniel had optimized every variable for perception. Today, he was choosing alignment over image. A senior board member asked quietly, "Are you prepared for backlash?" "Yes." The meeting ended without consensus, but without reversal. The partnership remained. At the country club that evening, whispers followed Charlotte and Nathaniel across the terrace. "I saw the article," one woman said carefully to Charlotte. Charlotte smiled politely. "It's strategic." "Of course," the woman replied, though her eyes carried curiosity. Nathaniel stood near the railing overlooking the golf course. Two men approached him. "Bold move," one said. "Risky," the other added. Nathaniel did not retreat. "It's necessary." "For the company?" one asked. "For me," Nathaniel replied. The men exchanged glances. "That's new," one said lightly. Nathaniel held their gaze. "Yes." Charlotte joined him shortly after. "They're watching," she said quietly. "I know." "Are you certain?" "Yes." She studied him carefully. "You've never chosen discomfort before." He met her eyes. "I've chosen it before. I just didn't follow through." Charlotte absorbed that. "And now?" "Now I am." She nodded slowly. "Then be prepared." "For what?" "For consequences." Nathaniel did not flinch. "Good." For the first time in years, his decisions felt aligned with his conscience rather than his strategy. The headlines intensified. Financial commentators debated whether emotion influenced leadership. Social media speculated about reconciliation. Nathaniel ignored most of it, because the real confrontation was not online. It was waiting at the Harrington estate. The Harrington estate felt colder than ever. Nathaniel entered the sitting room, where his father stood near the fireplace, hands clasped behind his back. "You've jeopardized everything," his father began without greeting. "No," Nathaniel replied evenly. "I've clarified it." His father turned slowly. "Partnering with her publicly invites scrutiny. She earned the contract. That's not the issue. It is to me." His father's jaw tightened. "You're thinking emotionally." "For once," Nathaniel said calmly. "Yes." Silence fell heavily. His father stepped closer. "You allowed that woman to re-enter our narrative." "That woman," Nathaniel corrected firmly, "is the mother of my son." The words landed. Public acknowledgement, even within private walls. His father's eyes sharpened. You questioned whether the child was yours. I was wrong. You acted prudently. I acted fearfully. The admission shifted the dynamic. Nathaniel continued. You pressured me to protect the name. I guided you. You intimidated me. The room went still. His father had never been spoken to that way. Nathaniel did not raise his voice. He did not accuse. He stated, You told me optics mattered more than integrity. They do in our world. Not anymore. His father scoffed lightly. You're naive. No, Nathaniel replied. I'm late. The older man stared at him. You think this redeems you? No, Nathaniel said honestly. It doesn't erase anything. Then why risk it? Nathaniel stepped forward. Because Cairo deserves acknowledgement, and your ex-wife deserves respect. His father shook his head slightly. You're letting personal guilt dictate corporate direction. Nathaniel met his eyes. I'm letting responsibility dictate it. A long silence passed. For the first time, Nathaniel did not defer, did not soften, did not retreat. You built Harrington Financial, he said, steadily. But I will define its future. His father's voice lowered. You'd fracture this family? Nathaniel's reply was immediate. It fractured the day I chose fear. Silence. The fireplace crackled softly. His father studied him differently now. Not as a subordinate, but as a man choosing independently. And if this costs you? His father asked. It already did, Nathaniel replied quietly. The weight of that statement lingered. I won't erase my son again, Nathaniel continued. And I won't diminish the woman I married because you were uncomfortable. His father did not respond immediately. Years of dominance met unexpected resistance. Finally he said, You've changed. Nathaniel nodded once. Yes. He turned toward the door. Legacy isn't a last name, he added. It's what you stand for when standing costs you. He left without waiting for approval. That night, Nathaniel called the media team. I want a statement prepared, he said. Regarding the partnership? Regarding my son. The next morning, the headline shifted again. Nathaniel Harrington publicly acknowledges son in statement on partnership. He did not romanticize it. He did not dramatize it. He simply said, I walked away from something important once. I won't do that again. The reaction was divided. Some praised transparency, others questioned judgment, but Nathaniel did not retract. For the first time in his life, he chose courage publicly. CTA third. Would you forgive someone who failed you once they finally grew? Be honest. The groundbreaking event in Atlanta drew more attention than expected, partly because of the scale of the redevelopment project, mostly because of the headlines that preceded it. The stage stood at the center of the cleared lot. Community leaders gathered. Media cameras lined the perimeter. Carter Urban Collective banners stood beside Harrington Financial logos. Imani stood near the podium reviewing her remarks. Cairo adjusted his small blazer nervously. You ready? She asked. Yeah, he said, though his voice was softer than usual. Nathaniel stood several feet behind the stage, off to the side. Not front and center, not claiming ownership. Present, but not dominant. Charlotte stood near the media row, observing quietly. The host introduced Imani first. Applause rose. She spoke clearly about sustainable growth, community investment, and shared equity. Then she surprised the audience. I'd like someone else to say a few words, she said. Cairo looked at her. You got this, she whispered. He stepped forward, small hands gripping the podium, microphones adjusted downward. He looked out at the crowd, then at his mother, then briefly at Nathaniel. My name is Cairo, he said clearly. I like building things. Soft laughter from the audience. My mom says when you build something, you should make sure everybody can use it. Applause grew. And my dad says, if you mess up, you gotta fix it. The crowd shifted. Nathaniel's posture remained steady. Cairo continued. So this building is for everybody. He stepped back. Imani placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. Nathaniel did not rush forward. He did not interrupt. He did not reclaim the spotlight. When invited to speak, he walked to the microphone calmly. I'm not here to reclaim anything, he said evenly. I'm here to repair. Silence held the space. I once confused protection with avoidance. He did not elaborate. He did not dramatize. But legacy isn't preserved by erasing mistakes. He looked toward Cairo briefly. It's strengthened by acknowledging them. Applause rose slowly, not explosive, but respectful. Nathaniel stepped away from the podium, returning to the side, allowing the ceremony to continue without centering himself. As the ceremonial shovels broke ground, cameras captured the moment. Imani standing firm, Cairo smiling brightly, Nathaniel slightly behind them, not leading, but present. And for the first time, presence meant more than power. Public courage did not equal private access. 3 days after the ceremony, Nathaniel sat across from Imani at her office inside Carter Urban Collective. No boardroom this time. No corporate hierarchy. Her space. Framed photos of completed projects lined the walls. Cairo's artwork hung near her desk. A drawing labeled, "Me plus Mom plus Dad," at building day. Nathaniel noticed it. Did not comment. Imani folded her hands on the table. "Before anything continues," she said calmly, "we need structure." "I agree," Nathaniel replied. "This is not reconciliation," she continued. "I understand. This is fatherhood." "Yes." Her eyes held his firmly. "You don't get access because you made a speech." He didn't argue. "You get access because you show up." Nathaniel nodded once. "What does that look like?" "School calendar shared weekly. Done. Science fair attendance confirmed. I'll be there. Alternate weekends. Public parks. Neutral spaces. Yes. No overnight visits for now." He paused slightly, then nodded. "Okay. And no confusion." He frowned faintly. "Meaning, you are his father," she said evenly. "But you are not my partner." Nathaniel absorbed that without resistance. "I know." Imani leaned back slightly. "You chose comfort once. I did. You don't get to rush trust because you regret it." He exhaled slowly. "I'm not asking for that." "Good." Silence settled, but it wasn't hostile. It was deliberate. Imani continued. "You'll attend parent-teacher meetings." "Yes." "You'll answer when he calls." "Yes." "You'll keep your promises." "Yes." She studied him carefully. "Consistency builds repair." "I understand. And one more thing." He looked up. "You don't get to love us loudly if you won't love us consistently." The words landed with precision. Nathaniel held her gaze. "I won't perform. Good. I'll participate." That mattered more. The first few weeks were quiet, structured. Nathaniel attended Cairo's robotics club showcase and stood in the second row, not front. Cairo ran up afterward. "You came." "I said I would." Cairo nodded approvingly. "Good." Imani observed from a distance. No fanfare. No overcompensation. Just presence. One Saturday at Piedmont Park, Cairo kicked a soccer ball clumsily between them. "You're not very good," Cairo told Nathaniel honestly. Nathaniel laughed softly. "I'm learning." Cairo grinned. "Me too." Imani watched the interaction carefully. No grand gestures. No guilt-driven indulgence. Nathaniel didn't buy expensive gifts. He bought a library card for Cairo instead. "You like books?" he asked. "Yeah, so do I." They sat together at a small reading table one afternoon, both quietly turning pages. For Nathaniel, the silence felt different now. Not empty. Occupied. Meaningful. One evening, after dropping Cairo home, Nathaniel lingered at the gate. "I'm not trying to reclaim anything," he said quietly to Imani. "I know. I just don't want him to question whether he's wanted." "He doesn't," she replied calmly. Nathaniel looked relieved. "Because I never speak of you with bitterness." He blinked slightly. "You don't?" "No." She met his eyes. "I speak of accountability." That distinction mattered. Nathaniel nodded. "I'll earn the rest." "You'll maintain it," she corrected. Repair was not an emotional event. It was a pattern. Months passed. Structured weekends became routine. Cairo began calling Nathaniel spontaneously. "Can you check my math?" "Yes." "Can you explain compound interest again?" "Yes." One late evening, after Cairo had fallen asleep during a movie night at Imani's house, Nathaniel stepped onto the porch. Atlanta air carried warmth. Imani followed a few minutes later. They stood side by side, not touching. "You've been steady," she said quietly. "I said I would be. You have." Silence lingered between them. "You're different," she added. "I had to be. For him. For myself." She looked at him carefully. "What changed?" Nathaniel leaned against the railing. "Fear feels smaller when faced." "And your father?" "We disagree." "And Charlotte?" He exhaled slowly. "We've talked." Imani didn't press. He continued. "Our marriage was built on alignment. And now, I'm changing alignment." She nodded slightly. "I never needed rescue." "I know. I needed growth." Nathaniel looked at her. "I'm growing." She studied him carefully. "You don't get to love us loudly if you won't love us consistently." He nodded. "I won't confuse visibility with devotion again." She let the silence settle. "You hurt me deeply," she said evenly. "I know. I rebuilt without you. I see that. You don't get credit for my strength. I'm not asking for it." That mattered. He wasn't seeking redemption points. He was seeking responsibility. After a long pause, Imani spoke again. "I don't trust quickly." "You shouldn't. And I don't romanticize growth." "I'm not asking for romance." She raised an eyebrow slightly. "No? No. What are you asking for?" "Partnership in parenting. And," he hesitated briefly, "and the chance to earn something more slowly." She looked toward the yard where Cairo's bike rested against the fence. "Slow is the only option." "I'll take it." The porch light flickered softly. They did not move closer. They did not reopen old intimacy. They acknowledged possibility without demanding it. Repair required patience, and patience was something neither of them had valued properly before. 1 year later, the redevelopment project thrived. Community ownership shares increased. Retention rates surpassed projections. Carter Urban Collective became a respected strategic partner. Harrington Financial stabilized long-term revenue in urban markets. The partnership proved profitable, but more importantly, sustainable. Cairo now spent alternating weekends at Nathaniel's townhouse, not overnight initially. Now comfortably. He had his own small desk there, books stacked neatly, a framed photo of him and Nathaniel at the science fair. "First place," Cairo reminded him often. Nathaniel smiled each time. Yes. They built model bridges together on Saturdays. Nathaniel listened more than he spoke. Imani observed consistency. No missed weekends, no canceled commitments, no performative gestures, just repetition of presence. Charlotte, meanwhile, began adjusting her own trajectory. One quiet afternoon, she met Nathaniel in the same country club where they once walked seamlessly. "We were aligned once," she said calmly. "Yes, we are not no." There was no shouting, no betrayal narrative, just recognition. "You're choosing something different," she said. "Yes. I respect that. And you?" "I prefer stability." He nodded. "And you deserve it." They ended their marriage quietly. No public drama. A joint statement citing evolving priorities. Charlotte did not villainize Imani. She simply stepped toward a life that matched her values. Nathaniel watched her walk away with respect. Their marriage had not been cruel. It had been insufficient. Cairo noticed nothing dramatic. He simply had 2 steady homes now. And one consistent father. The sun lowered over Atlanta in soft gold. Imani sat on her grandmother's porch swing, watching Cairo ride his bike in slow circles. Nathaniel stood nearby, holding 2 glasses of lemonade. He handed one to her. "Thank you." They sat quietly. No urgency, no dramatic score swelling, just peace earned. "I didn't need you to save me," Imani said gently. Nathaniel nodded. "I know. I needed you to grow." He looked at her fully. "I finally did." Silence followed. Not awkward, intentional. "I won't promise perfection," he added. "I don't want that. I promise consistency." She studied him. "You've shown it." Cairo rode past them, laughing. Nathaniel smiled at the sound. "Legacy isn't about reclaiming what I lost," he said quietly. "It's about protecting what we build now." Imani nodded. "Legacy is more than money. Yes. Its character. Yes. They didn't reach for each other. They didn't dramatize forgiveness. They chose something quieter. Partnership. Slow rebuilding. Trust measured in actions, not declarations. Cairo stopped his bike in front of them. Are you two talking about serious stuff again? Imani smiled. Always. Nathaniel chuckled lightly. Want lemonade? Yes. Cairo grabbed the glass and sat on the steps. As the sun dipped lower, the three of them sat together. Not perfect, not romanticized, but aligned. The empire had been saved. But more importantly, a boy no longer questioned whether he was wanted. And two adults learned that love without courage is decoration. Legacy required more, and they were finally willing to give it. If you've ever rebuilt from heartbreak and came back stronger, comment, I rebuilt. If you believe legacy is more than money, like this video, and if you want more stories about strength, accountability, and grown love, subscribe.